everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Alex and today I'm going to be giving you some contemporary recommendations. Now basically a contemporary novel is just a book that is happening in our day and our time. So it's not a historical fiction and it's not a fantasy, it's something that's happening in the world right now or close to right now. And they are some of my favorite books to read. I feel like contemporaries can really fall into one of two categories. On one hand, you have the really light and fun, fluffy kind of contemporaries. Most of the time they're a romance, but they tend to stay lighter, maybe more character-driven novels. And on the other hand, we have hard-hitting contemporaries. And those usually cover a variety of topics, maybe mental illness or grief, some kind of harder-hitting issue. And I definitely have favorites that fall on both sides of the list, and I'm excited to share them with you today. So without further ado, let's get started. First, I'm gonna begin with some contemporaries that I feel are a little bit on the lighter side. Some of them may have some darker elements within them, but for the most part, a lot of these are just light, fun, fluffy, kind of summary reads that might not have as much substance to them. They're usually pretty quick to fly through, and they're just fun to read in general. So first, I'm gonna list a few of my favorites of those. The first one I'm gonna go with is a recent read for me, and that is the Unnie Mooners by Christina Lauren. This one has blown up on BookTube lately, so you have probably heard of it or may have even read it by now, but it follows our main character, Olive, who at the beginning of the novel, her twin sister is getting married. And Olive absolutely despises her new brother-in-law's brother. Would that make him a brother-in-law too? They have obviously had to be around each other a ton trying to prepare for this wedding, and they absolutely hate each other. But at the reception, everybody except for Olive and Ethan winds up coming down with a terrible case of food poisoning, and the honeymoon trip that Olive's sister had planned to Hawaii is non-refundable. So the sister says, you and Ethan go on our trip, go enjoy 10 days in Maui on us. So it follows Olive and Ethan as they go on this vacation to Maui together, absolutely hating each other, but having to pretend to be married. This is a classic rom-com, hate-to-love romance, which is a trope that I absolutely adore. I love Christina Lauren, and I felt like this was done really, really well. There are parts in it that are just laugh out loud funny. I definitely would recommend the audiobook because the narrator is really, really talented. And just overall, this is a rom-com. It's so quick to get through, it's so funny, you will fly through it. If you haven't read it yet, I would recommend trying to pick it up before summer ends. Another of my favorite lighter contemporaries is When Dimple Met Rishi by Sanya Menon. This is Sanya Menon's debut novel, but she has written two other novels since then, which I haven't gotten the chance to read yet, but from what I've heard, they are the same kind of light and fluffy contemporaries like this one that I really enjoyed. This story follows our main character, Dimple, and her parents want to set her up in an arranged marriage, but she is not feeling that. She wants to go and become a coder. She wants to go to this coding camp and make her own path for herself. And we also follow another main character, Rishi, whose parents also want to set him up in an arranged marriage, and he is a hopeless romantic. He's all for it, and he's ready to meet his future wife. So when Rishi figures out that Dimple is going to be at this coding camp, he decides to surprise her and show up too and try to get their romance started, and shenanigans ensue from there. I thought that this romance was really, really cute. This story was really well done, especially for a debut novel. I cannot wait to read more from Sanya Menon, but this one was just cute, fun, fluffy contemporary. I really appreciated that the romance didn't overshadow everything else that was going on in the story. I just thought that it was really well done overall, and I'm excited to jump into more of her things in the future. And one author that I want to quickly mention just in general is Morgan Matson. I've talked about her quite a few times. I consider her to be the queen of contemporary. All of her novels that I've read from her have been cute and fluffy contemporary with a little bit more serious elements going on. But overall, even though they are big novels, they read very quickly, they're light and fluffy, perfect for summer. So if you haven't picked up a Morgan Matson book yet and you're looking for a contemporary, I would definitely recommend her. Now there are quite a few contemporary novels on my list that kind of walk the line between light and serious, so those are the ones that I'm going to go into next. So the first one I'm going to talk about is A Man Called Uwe by Frederick Bachman. This novel follows our main character, Uwe, who is basically just a grumpy old man. He wants everybody to leave him alone. He likes things the way that he likes them, and he just wants everybody else to let him be. But one day, a young couple and their two daughters move in next door, and they try to kind of bring him out of his shell. You get to watch him kind of develop throughout the novel. I believe this was Frederick Bachman's debut novel, and it was beautifully done. Uwe is a character that you just really come to love. The writing in this is hilarious, and it's done so so well. There are quite a few darker topics covered in this novel, but they are balanced so well with the hilarious scenes in it. I think that this was beautifully done. I have since read almost everything else that Frederick Bachman has written and have absolutely loved them all. He is definitely one of my favorite authors. So if you are interested in contemporaries and you haven't checked him out yet, I would definitely give him a go. The next two that I have that are both light and serious are two of my favorite books of all time that I have talked about many a time on my channel, so I'm going to put them together and go through them very quickly. The first one is With a Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. This follows our main character, Imani, who is a teen mom that loves to cook and gets a chance to go with her school to a culinary excursion to Spain. This one is lighter and just follows a high school student trying to figure out her life, but she does also have to deal with being a mother, trying to navigate relationships with her family and with boys. So it does have lighter and darker elements to it, but they are perfectly done. Elizabeth Acevedo is incredibly talented, and I cannot wait to read more from her in the future. And Far from the Tree follows three siblings who were separated at birth. Two of the siblings have been adopted into separate families, and the third sibling has spent his life in the foster care system, and they wind up finding each other and going on a quest to find their birth mother. This one is a little bit on the darker side, but there are definitely happy moments in this book. It is very well balanced. Robin Benway has a beautiful way of writing. She gives equal attention to each of these characters. None of them feel pushed out, none of them feel focused on. She balances it really beautifully, and the story comes together so well. This is such an impactful and emotional read. So like I said, it is a little bit on the harder hitting side, but regardless, it's flawless. Now I'm going to move into some of the harder hitting contemporaries on my list. Now, first, I just want to talk about an author and one of her books in particular. So that author is Colleen Hoover, and the book that I want to mention is It Ends With Us. Colleen Hoover's books are all typically romance novels that have some sort of darker twist kind of towards the end. So while the beginning might be a little bit light, you know that there's something coming, and this one is definitely like that. This is the most impactful of her novels that I have read so far. If you've watched my Books That Made Me Cry video, you will have seen this before. If you've read this book, you will know why. I'm not going to say here because it is, I consider it to be a spoiler. But all of her books do have harder hitting elements, but they're all beautifully done. Colleen Hoover really makes you care genuinely about her characters, and she just does everything so well. All of her plots are unique to themselves, but they all just turn out so well, and she always does twists that you don't expect, and she's just incredibly talented. So if you have not yet picked up her novels, again, I would definitely recommend them. The next one I want to talk about is a little bit of an older read, and that is Room by Emma Donoghue. If you have not read this novel, you may be familiar with the movie that stars Brie Larson and Jake Tremblay. This story is told by 5-year-old Jack, who has only known this place called Room, and his mother has been kept there by this man named Old Nick. Jack is 5. The mom has been kept in this room for 7 years. And I'm not going to say much more than that because it does kind of get into spoilery territory, but as you can only imagine, this book is very, very hard-hitting, very emotional. There are a lot of trigger warnings that I would put on this novel, including rape and sexual assault and abuse. So if those are things that will trigger you, I might stray away from this one, but if you are interested, it is an incredibly impactful novel. It went in a direction that I did not really expect, but I completely appreciated the way that the author handled it. This is the only thing that I've read by Emma Donoghue, but I definitely want to read more of her books in the future. My next contemporary recommendation is A List of Cages by Robin Rowe. This novel was really, really popular back in 2017 when it came out. Everybody was talking about it on BookTube, but since then I haven't heard as much about it, so I wanted to bring it back around because I feel like it has been pretty underrated since then. This story follows Adam, who is a senior in high school, and he becomes an aide to the school's psychologist. And one day he has to go and get a student for the psychologist, and comes to find out this student is Julian, who was Adam's foster brother 5 years ago. Adam and Julian try to strike their friendship back up and kind of regain what they've lost since they haven't seen each other in 5 years, but Adam quickly comes to realize that Julian may be hiding what's actually going on in his personal life. Now again, this is another one that is very, very hard hitting. There are again definite trigger warnings for this one involved. The main trigger warning I would put on this one is abuse. So again, if that will trigger you, I would stay away from this one. But otherwise, I think that again, the subject was handled with care, but there are some pretty graphic scenes in here, so just be aware of that going in. But I thought that the relationship between Adam and Julian was done so well. This is a story where I just completely got invested in the characters, and I was incredibly emotional throughout the story. So if that's what you're looking for, try to pick this one up. Next, I want to talk about Girl Made of Stars by Ashley Herring Blake. This story follows our main character, Mara, who has a twin brother named Owen. When Mara's best friend Hannah accuses Owen of rape, Mara has to decide whose side she is going to be on. This one was definitely an interesting read for me because I felt like simultaneously it was such a grand story that covered a whole lot of topics while still seeming kind of small and contained. It's kind of hard to describe, but I loved the way that the balance was achieved. I think that Ashley Herring-Blake did a beautiful job of handling this very sensitive topic. I will also say there is bisexual representation in this novel, which I believe is own voices, and I personally found to be done really well. This is another novel that I thought was really hyped up whenever it first came out, and it has since kind of fallen off the radar. So again, if you like hard-hitting contemporaries, this is one that's a little more backlist that I feel like you might enjoy. And the last novel I'm going to talk about today is The Nowhere Girls by Amy Reed. This book starts with our main character, Grace, who has moved from Kentucky to Oregon. When Grace moves into her new home, she learns about Lucy, who is the girl that used to live in her house. And Lucy had accused 3 of the star athletes of the school of rape, and after the town didn't believe her, she and her family moved away, and nobody has heard from them since. So along with her 2 new classmates, Erin and Rosina, Grace starts a group called the Nowhere Girls, where they are trying to expose these boys for their behavior and just generally give a voice to the sexual assault that's happening in this community. Now, obviously, again, there are a lot of trigger warnings in this book, namely for sexual assault and rape. There are also a lot of diverse elements in this novel. Rosina is queer and her family are Mexican immigrants. Erin has Asperger's, and Grace speaks a lot about her Christian faith. I thought that this novel, again, was really well done. This one is a very character-driven story, but it was paced very well, so it never got boring, it never felt like we were stagnant, and I felt like the diversity and just everything in this novel came together so beautifully. There are a ton of topics that are covered in this novel, but Amy Reed did a beautiful job of just weaving everything together and making it feel cohesive and coherent. Again, this is one that I feel like is a little bit more under the radar, so if it sounds appealing to you, kind of like all of these, go ahead and try to pick it up. So that is it for my contemporary recommendations. Of course, this is not an all-inclusive list. There are tons of great contemporary novels out there that I didn't get a chance to talk about today. So if you have any that you want to recommend to me and anybody else, go ahead and drop all of those in the comments down below. I would love to chat with you guys down there. So until next time, bye!